Let me show you guys something. This is all run and managed by the local sheriff's office. And there's his cop car right there. So less than 50 yards away, he lives here. And I get harassment every day, 24/7, worse than I ever have. And thanks to all my loving family and caring support, I'm mentally ill, I'm crazy, I'm delusional, I need medication. I don't see it, John. I don't understand it. Here's the intersection I just came from. Of course, you're running a little late, buddy. Yeah, running a little late. What's up, guys? Messenger of the Cross just coming to you with a short video. I just wanted to show you, ever since I've been filming the cop car parked outside of my window, which has been there the whole time I've lived here. As soon as I moved in, the cops moved in, just like usual. And then, of course, as soon as I started filming this guy's cop car, who parked right there where that white car is, that is an unmarked cop car now. And you can see it right there. Just an unmarked cop car. Try to get it in the view. You can see his gear on the inside of the windshield, but just an unmarked cop car, you know, no big deal. In my line of sight, I can't even look out my living room without having this guy in my line of sight. But yet, when I start filming his cop car parked there all the time in the community-based policing and harassment, all of a sudden, he's just got an unmarked cop car there. Because they know I'm filming, so they switch it up to gaslight. And that's the bottom line. I just wanted to let you guys know, you start filming these people, and they will start responding to you even though there's been no communication about me posting videos. You know, they don't know that I'm posting videos, but they do. And this is why they respond with directed speech and letting me know, hey, we know you're filming the cop car, so we're going to switch it up on you and put an unmarked cop car that doesn't have the sheriff's office written on the side of it. No big deal. And then just the stalking and harassment continues. And like, there's my car. And we go over here, and there's his car. And every time I walk outside of my front door, people are coming and going with me at the same time, no matter what time of the day I come and go. And the gang stalking commences. But this has been my life for the last 25 years. I move in, the cops move in, then all of a sudden the community-based policing starts. That's all I've been doing for 25 years. Fighting these people off of me just to survive and stay alive. What's up, guys? Pulse Point Media. I just want to show you something. Like, this is the kind of thing that goes on all the time. I mean, when I look out my living room window, guys, it's just like, you know, I don't have to go outside even to be mobbed and harassed where red and white cars and all this street theater and activity and all this busyness is happening just in my line of sight. It's never happening anywhere else in the community. I mean, if you look over here, you look over here, you know, there's nothing else going on, but it's always in my line of sight, always red and white, and always this performance, this scripted act of attention getting. And, you know, they're just, you know, just having a conversation, but it's just always right in front of me. You know what I mean? So there's this plausible deniability. What's up, guys? This is Messenger of the Cross, Pulse Point Media. I just wanted to talk a little bit today about the simple fact that most of our family members have decided to pretty much our whole lives offer us up. And they offer us on the altar of their ego to try to get bad reactions only. It's like our family members and people that have known us have been, you know, brain damaged or something, to be on a loop and to repeat that loop in a parallel, mimicking and mirroring, synced up way to us as victims of this targeting. And our whole lives have been under this. We didn't realize it till maybe later in our lives that we were being followed, we were being watched, we were being observed, we were being systematically worked against. I mean, the competition was unreal and is unreal. You know, the amount of comparing and displayed envy in the people that are supposed to love us. I mean, they roll their eyes, they shake their head, they huff and puff, they stomp their feet, they have temper tantrums when they can't one up or make themselves superior to you. And it's all about competing over that real righteousness that's in you. You know what I mean? It's been a gift, what God has given us. And yet these people want to take it for their own, and they want to offer it up from being in our possession. But what they don't realize is that it is connected to our identity. And our identity isn't like these perps who, you know, take on many different roles. You know, we don't have hundreds of different identities and personalities that we switch into at our own convenience for fuel's sake, just to support and uphold something false, something fake. That's not the way we are. We are genuine, we are authentic people who developed. We developed. And in spite of family and friends and everyone in our lives trying to stop that process, you know, that's what's so shocking and amazing, is that family and friends weren't there to be supportive at all, but they infiltrated your life secretly and hid the abuse that they were doing, all in the name of keeping things safe, all in the name of saving lives. And this is how they placated to their grandiosity. They never had to answer for their grandiosity and their delusional pride and arrogance and dissociative disorder. They never had to answer for the things that they did and the thoughts that they acted on without questioning those thoughts, without examining those thoughts and just acting on them. And to the destruction and damage and harm and loss and pain and misery that comes along with behaviors that are toxic, that are ugly, that are destructive, that are injurious, that are painful, that are, you know, designed to cause constant agony within you, constant churning, constant turmoil. That is what makes them happy. When you are hurting 24/7 and bleeding out around these sharks 24/7, that's what they want. And they want to feed on it. They don't want to heal your wounds. You know, they might fake, like family members have done to me, and, oh, we love you, John, we just want to help you, we just are so concerned. But they never listen to what we're saying, do they? They never actually examine and look into the things that we've been talking about. They just automatically write us off and call us crazy and say we're mentally ill and gaslight us time and again, even with evidence, and even when we show our own family members who have been in denial, abject denial towards us, laughing, mocking, sticking out their lip, rolling their eyes, shaking their head, huffing and puffing, calling us crazy, saying we're imagining things, saying we need mental help. But they never want to acknowledge that every time I go to the mailbox, my neighbor comes out in a red shirt and wants to go to the mailbox. They never want to acknowledge that if I want to go wash my car, that people will come out that are my neighbors in red shirts and follow me over to wash my car, and they just happen to need to wash their car at the same time. Or how about when I just walk to my car from my place, and this coming and going happens no matter what time of the day I come and go? And then it escalates, of course, as many of you targeted individuals understand what I'm talking about when I talk about each adjustment that you try to make to get away from being set up, to get away and out of being victimized by the abuse. And it's all designed to just get you to react. They want you to react because that becomes their evidence against an innocent person. You know what I mean? They want to rewrite the narrative, rewrite the roles, rewrite the story, and switch the goalposts all the time on you. And that is meant to destabilize, and it's meant to radicalize. You know, when you're creating an environment for someone that's always painful and always, you know, a crisis, always an emergency, always an ambush, always a surprise, eventually, you know, the victim of that starts to have, you know, serious nervous system damage. You know what I mean? And it's that intermittent reinforcement of how they take you up and take you down and take you up and take you down. That is the issue. You know what I mean? And we just get off this roller coaster, even though they use abuse to try to force us, you know, to engage them the way they want us to engage them in their fantasy world. You know, they need us to be the abusive, reckless, dangerous, you know, individual that needs to be watched and monitored and observed and controlled. And they just don't accept, family and friends just don't accept that, you know, we're individuals. We are autonomous. We are independent. We make our own choices. And they have gone about to try to collapse and destroy and ruin. And there we go. We just find family and friends positioned between us and the resources that we need, trying to destroy them and remove them and sacrifice them and kick out the legs of a chair. And it's more than that. What our families and friends, people that were a part of our lives before we started seeing the targeting and realizing what was going on, we realized that, you know, something was going on and family and friends were participating in it because the level of denial was so great. And with evidence, with proof, with the facts of the external world to support us. And just, we would come time and again and say, you know, hey, like, people are following me around and people are, you know, I was just poisoned last week. I was in the hospital for like a month, you know, where were you? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what happened to me, but I got really sick and just out of nowhere and ended up in the hospital, you know, and my lungs were collapsing, you know, like stuff like that, where family and friends make themselves scarce and disappear and vanish and ghost. And, you know, you can't get a hold of anybody. And everybody's just enjoying themselves, living their lives, entertaining themselves to death instead of loving and caring and being present. And that is what my biggest complaint is with my family, is that they are on autopilot. Nobody's home. Something else is operating in them. Something else is flowing through them. And it's not good. And it's not God. I'll tell you that much. The lying, the cheating, the stealing, the hiding the abuse. Hiding the abuse. And being cowardly, because that's what it really is. When you coordinate and organize abuse to be done and get third parties, covert abuse, where you get third parties to go after somebody through slander, through playing the victim to those third parties, to stir up animosity, to stir up hatred and anger, and, you know, just placate to these people that, you know, are delusional and want to be heroes and saviors. And so they just don't question anything and go right along with, you know, our perps who play the victim act perfectly, like a professional. And that is what they do. And that is how they get third parties so easily to go against us. And believe me, every second you're around the narcissist, covert, malignant, sadist, they are going to do whatever it takes to win, to dominate, to make sure you have no choice but to fight back. And that is what they want. They want to take away all the probabilities of escape. And then they want to bring you under their mess. And that mess, they just say you did it. And they just coordinate and organize together and agree that, hey, you have something wrong with you. And you need mental help. Because how dare you complain about the tactics of coordinated, organized abuse? And of course, like I've always said, it's all done in the name of keeping things safe. And that is what tyrants all through history have done. And, you know, I'm not claiming to know everything. I'm just saying that most tyrants have, you know, been able to be tyrants because they, don't let the public know that there is this Hegelian dialectic happening. That the people that have the motive and the power and the money and the control are the ones who have the invested interest to see things go a certain way. And they use their money, time, and energy and power to make sure that there's just an illusion, an appearance of choice when there's no choice. They collapse those other probabilities and possibilities. And then they provide a solution that they have constructed prior. And this is what I mean about abusive people, doing the abuse and hiding the abuse and then posing as the savior, posing as the hero to the very thing that they cause. And is it that devious? Yes. Is it that mischievous? Yes. Do people play both sides of the fence and switch from one role to another and make no connection between one identity and another, and have no shame, no remorse, no guilt, no empathy, no sense of shame that one day you're 100% this way, the next day you don't even remember those conversations and you're a different person saying different words with a different cadence, with a different look in your eye. It's like people don't understand, that the brainwashing hasn't really taken effect in me. Two polar opposites don't equal the same thing. And when you've got people going, up, down, back, forth, right, left, and the people around you are doing that, it's all designed just to dislodge you from your thinking and get you to not trust in your senses and your intuition. That's all it is. And family and friends have been trying to undermine, and they have, realized that God has called us from such a young age, and they saw the favor of God in our lives. They saw the blessing, that there was nothing they could do. They gave their best. They gave their best at attempting to slow down and stop and hinder and stagnate and do whatever they could to try to bring ruin and pain and misery in our lives, because they saw us only as their fuel source. We were not separate to them. We were not external creatures to them. Especially family and friends that have used our lives this way. They put you in a box and they take a snapshot of who they think you are in their own mind, and they leave out all the facts of reality. They leave out so much contrary because they can't accept that. They're too emotionally immature to realize that their thinking is castrated. It's only infantile. It's you got to go beyond black and white. There is nuance. You got to go beyond reading one page in a book and then going around slandering somebody and saying that that's that person. And then when you don't get those reactions that you want from doing that, then you push for further abuse and further harm and damage and collapse and breakdown. And you are, many of you have gone through where family and friends have offered support and help, and then, by that very means, they have used those items as an inroad to gain more control. And when they see that you're attached to something and that you actually care for and love something else, well, then they get this comparing and this envy and this competition game going, where they start to destroy the very thing that they gave you. You know what I mean? Because they can't allow you to have better and be better, and they can't allow you to be happy. And you being happy involves, you being separate and independent, because these people can't accept that you're not them and they're not you, because that's all they really want, is to take what does not belong to them. And that is what they spend all their time doing. Mimicking, mirroring, copying, and really shameless, because they're going to third parties pretending to be you. You know what I mean? Taking your words, taking your ideas, taking your language, taking what you have learned, and then presenting that to third parties as if it's you, and sacrificing you at the same time, undermining you at the same time, handing you a mess, or inviting you in, inviting you to sit down in the chair, and then kicking out the legs of the chair as soon as you're depending on that chair to hold you up. They move to pull the rug out from under your feet. And it is this desire that they have for pain, for torture, for harm to come, for grief, for being a minister of pain. That is what they're proud of. That is what they're happy about. That is what they rejoice about. So no wonder God has separated many of us from our family members, because we have too much light in us. And it's not that we try to expose people or try to even bring these things to light. It just happens as a course of nature. And the light in us just, it causes those hidden things within them and family and friends and the people that are NPCs to really become enraged, because it shows them what they're lacking and shows them that, they could never be what we are. And what we are is, victorious in everything when it comes to walking with Jesus. And when it comes to my faith, it is, only Christ. And it's my moment-to-moment interaction with him that supplies me with everything I need to overcome, even though the environment and the circumstances might not change. You know what I mean? I'm learning how to enjoy him and learning how to abandon the, civil war within, where, the environment tries to trigger a reaction. And instead of giving that environment, my time and energy and interacting with it, I learn how to make that transfer and rather interact with Christ as that thing is going on. You see what I'm saying? So it is about being present, and it's about, really girding your mind and, casting down like every imagination and every vain thought, and learning how to cast down those thoughts and recognizing what's of God and what's not of God is the key for discernment, having strong discernment. But if it wasn't for God, I always say this, because if it wasn't for God, I would never have seen family and friends, caught in the very act of doing the very abuse that I've been complaining about for 20 years. And here my family was, the main root behind, the slander and smear campaigns, and, not being ashamed about it, and coming to me and even mocking me and saying that nobody's gonna ever believe you, because it's gone on for our whole lives. You know what I mean? These narcissists, psychopaths think they own you. They think that you're their possession, and they do so many things to us, guys. So many things to us. And if they were in our shoes just one day, they would not survive and they would not last. But we are saying this because, and many of us are saying this, I'm trying to say, because our lives have been really damaged to the point where we are being held hostage. We are being interdicted. In all our activity, there is this opposition. And this opposition is there to be destructive and ruinous and take us 2 steps backwards. And it is parallel to us. And this is, the 20 against 1 perp session that they do to many of us. The mobbing, the gaslighting, the stalking, the pressure, the, pushing for a breakdown, finding out your vulnerabilities and trying to bring those to pass only. And that is what they try to do. And just the color sensitizing alone is enough for, people to start becoming frustrated. You know what I mean? Every tactic they use is negative. Every tactic they use is designed to evoke a strong angry reaction. That is what many of us have had to endure. And we have endured these people taking our emotional limits to the red line, and we've been, at the emotional red line limit and have at that limit broken out into something bigger and deeper, and it is God. You know what I mean? And so it is the peace that passes all understanding that guards our minds and our hearts in Christ Jesus. That, to me, is when I'm fellowshipping with Christ, when I'm interacting with him, when I'm telling him in sincerity and honesty, in an authentic, genuine way, you got to be it, Lord. You got to do it. You got to take it. You're anointed to take it. You can live your own life right now in the presence of these things. And so that is kind of how I make that transfer from self-sufficiency to, this boundless supply of everything that I need for life and everything that I need to make it through these things. And even though I can be well fed, and even though I can be hungry, the condition and the environment is not my primary concern or focus. My primary concern and focus isn't rearranging things and trying to think that managing life will make me happier if I just get control and manage things better. That is not my pursuit. My pursuit is to learn how to stay with Jesus and to abide in him and to interact with him no matter what distractions come up to try to break that fellowship, that try to come in and interrupt that contact and that interaction that I'm having. And whether it's prayer or singing or praising him or just rejoicing in God and being thankful for the things that he's done and how he showed up in my life again and again and again and again. And so I have to give credit where credit's due when it comes to having any victory, because God will always lead us in victory and in triumph in Christ. And he has shown me this. He has shown me this so that each day, there is this warfare going on, and it is this contradiction to our forward movement. And it is consistent, and it is there to dog you out. It is there in a coordinated, organized way. And no matter who you tell, even if you're super close to a loved one and they've been supportive of you your whole life, you'll start going through this stuff, and next thing you know, they're the first ones to betray you and lie about you and slander you and laugh about it and mock and go along. These people have something deep and dark about them. Family and friends and people that we've known in the past that God has removed from our lives, they have something very, very, very dark inside them. And it is expressed in the ways we're talking about. It is expressed against us in their actions. And they are, more than capable of lying about us, slandering us, making up whole stories and scenarios that never happen, or trying to build evidence by being abusive and hiding that abuse, and trying to build evidence that we are what they say they are, just because we're defending ourselves from all the destruction and damage and collapse and control and breakdown and damage to property, and hunting us like we're dogs or animals, just hunting us for 25 years. And many of us have been hunted like an animal. You get to one community and you set up shop and you move in, and the first week is fine, and then next thing you know, your neighbors are moving out, and all these strange neighbors move in all around you, and then next thing you know, they're coming and going with you at the same time as you, no matter what time of the day you come and go, and letting you know it. So and you can go from state to state, you can go from even country to country, but you can go from state to state, and this will happen. You'll set up shop, they'll let you move, they'll let you spend the time, energy, and money, and then when you're done doing that and you get settled in and you're like, oh man, I'm just so grateful that I got out of that situation. They were trying to kill me, and all of it will start back up again to break your will, to break your soul, and it it is ruthless in that way that it doesn't stop, and there is no resting period that we have. We have to find rest as we're going through these things because it just doesn't stop. And many fake targets out there want to talk about how, you know, you can get delivered from this and it will end and it will stop and my targeting stopped. And, you know, there might be a select few where that is the case just to get those people saying that. But for the most part, you know, I've been targeted since my youth. And I have many stories in elementary school and high school and so on about my targeting and about, you know, that pretty much my whole life I've been enrolled in this harassment, gaslighting agenda where, you know, the only people around me are people trying to gaslight me. And it's not, you know, my perception of it. It is the facts of reality and the actions that I've documented and recorded and have shown. And they will involve you in car accidents. They will kill your dog and your pet. They will kill family members and make you watch it under the heavy mind control and remote neural monitoring that they do to family members to make you as a targeted individual watch, you know, your dad, you know, under mind control, making bad choices, and really self-harming, self-mutilating, you know, self-sabotaging choices just to worship people in, you know, white lab coats because that's what they're, you know, they're the qualified ones and they're the experts, the quote unquote experts. But because he chose to never question anything, you know, I watched them mind control him and walk him off a cliff, you know what I mean, and make all the wrong moves, all the wrong decisions, and out of fear, out of worry, you know what I mean? And so, and then of course, while they're murdering your family member and doing that to your family member, giving your family member cancer through the EMF broadcast and these microwave energy weapons that they use on families and people, you know, it's perfect for them. They just get to keep everybody separate and isolated, and true social interaction has been hijacked, and the way people relate to each other has completely been altered and changed, even in an evolutionary way. That's what I'm trying to say, is that true social interaction based on free will and free association does not happen anymore. Okay, and they let us know as victims of this abuse. You know, they let us know, you know, and show and flex their power so that you complain about it more and feel more desperate and feel, you know, more suffocated by the appearance of how great this is. You know, that it's like, you know, everybody around you, you know, you notice your neighbors don't really go out and get food. They never take out the garbage. And if they do take out the garbage, it's only to come out of their house at the same time as you, get next to you and walk next to you to go to the garbage and throw out the garbage. And then they throw it out at the same time as you. And then you walk back to your house and they walk back to their house at the same time. They stare at you, give you the death stare, the mean mug, huff and puff, do some sort of gesture, you know what I mean? And you go in and you wait for 10 minutes and you got something else to throw away and you decide to, you know, spontaneously go out and throw it again. There the neighbor is again, coming out at the same time, having something else to throw away. It is this kind of surveillance that is psychological and damaging because the target gets followed around 24/7 in this mimicking, mirroring way, and you can't explain it unless these people are being hijacked and controlled by a more powerful force. And whether you want to think it's technology, I think there's a lot of evidence for that. And, you know, I've shown a lot of evidence for that. And I just think that, you know, people have pledged allegiance to the devil. I mean, that's what this is all about. That's what I think. And because you got to have no remorse, no empathy, no sympathy, no compassion, no care, even for loved ones, as you offer them up and sacrifice them on the altar of your ego just to get the bad reactions. That's what you're living for. You know, that's what my family's living for. That's what my loved ones are living for. They don't want to ever examine anything. They don't want to ever look at anything and sit down and say, hey, you know, these were my actions to you and that they were very destructive, and I'm very sorry for impeding your progress and trying to prevent your development. I'm very sorry for that. I'm very sorry for thinking it was my place to put myself in the middle as a gatekeeper and prevent you from accessing resources, money, or relationships. And when someone is there competing with you over a relationship and wanting that for themselves and they think you don't deserve it, they will do whatever it takes to offer that relationship up. And next thing you know, good business partners or family or friends that you have built on your own, apart from your toxic family, will start to become affected and start to abandon and ghost and vanish, because the narcissist is there saying, behind your back to the people around you in an insistent way that you're dangerous, you're scary. And it's just this insistence that they have because they're so desperate to maintain the fantasy and the lies and the fake self that they're so determined and insistent that you are what they say you are. And that is the delusion. And that insistence is scary because there is this manufacturing pain and sorrow and breakdown and harm and hurt in order to validate a delusional fantasy on their part that they're a hero and a savior, and they're using us as that fuel source. They're using us and putting us and our lives on their altar that they've created for their ego, and sacrificing us and what belongs to us. And then along the way, instead of admitting the abuse, they just turn around and say to their third parties that are questioning things, if there's not just total enablers around these people that are controlling and organizing our abuse. But I mean, guys, I'm not going to go on and on. I'm just saying that, it's pretty sick what we have seen with family and friends. And, we thought we knew them. They thought they knew us, but we find out that they have been walking in darkness. They've been, participating in, secret societies and cults and clubs. And yet we're the conspiracy theorists for pointing out that it might be dangerous. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, I have family members that, I've been away for 25 years and I didn't know that, they were so concerned about me, and quote unquote, and, had to be involved in my decision making and be destructive in order to do that and gain the control of my decision making and the outcomes of things. And, it's just sad when someone obsesses over you so much and, thinks of you as only a threat to their fake life and fake self and deceit, because that is what, family and friends have in them when they turn a blind eye to all the things that they do with their actions, all the things that they've contributed to and put their weight into, you know what I mean? They made choices. It wasn't an accident that your life was experiencing a total breakdown and a collapse of all the basic and common resources to make you homeless or to put you in jail or to put you in a psych ward. They participated in trying to remove your freedom. And that is one of the main things. And they did it in the name of keeping things safe and saving lives without ever examining the person involved in any real way, just no due process. And your voice is not heard, and they silence you and then start punishing you and torturing you as if you're guilty of something when there is no trial, there is no examination of the facts and the external evidence and external world. And these people only take a snapshot, is like what I'm saying, is then they identify with that image of you that they've constructed, and they force you to relate to that image rather than, them realizing that they have an object relations problem and that they do not know how to relate to anything external. And you are just an extension. That is all you are. You are just an extension and a appliance, because they reduce people that are victims of this. And this has happened in my life, where the narcissist abuser tries to reduce you so that you are like a little bird in a nest having to be fed. It is infantilization. and they use abuse to force dependency. And this is how deep and dark their insecurity is. It doesn't matter if it damages 20 years of your life. The competition, the comparing, the one-upping, the keeping the score and making sure you lose, and doing it covertly, doing it and hiding the way you really feel about me, and doing the abuse and destroying any stability, destroying any foundation to stand on, destroying resources and removing them through artful, manipulative, and subtle, evil, dark, coercive, ugly, undermining ways, with an insistence that you don't deserve to exist, because they're going to take everything. And they say to themselves, you don't deserve this. Oh, so I don't deserve the basics to survive. And the narcissist is always trying to bolster themselves as if they've sacrificed so much and have done so much, when all they do is under what's required. And when you examine it, they always ghosted. They always vanished. They always did under what's required. Nothing was brought to completion by the narcissist in our family. Nothing had closure. All the problems were ongoing and open-ended, deliberately kept that way, so that there would be a crisis, an emotionally charged environment of red line reactiveness. And then that is fed on. That is what becomes the boost to their ego, because they've lowered you, they've rattled you, they've shaken you up. And the proof of that is that you're reacting bad to them, even though it's natural and normal to react bad to abuse. But they want to twist that and pretend like it's you who's abnormal for recognizing it. You don't see that. I didn't say that. You're crazy. You're mentally ill. That's not what happened, John. I mean, how many times have I been told things of that nature? And so we're just in this healing process, all of us, and we're recognizing that, our family and friends are not who they appear to be. And they presented as if they were something other than they really are. And when we strip back the onion layers, we begin to see that family and friends have been participating in great darkness and rationalizing it and justifying it and excusing it and pretending that it's, not the most cowardly thing that a person could ever do. You know what I mean? To target blood, to target your family and your loved ones, and to make sure that there's no stability, and to throw your weight around that way. And we're not saying, that we, didn't have bad reactions to a lot of the abuse growing up and things of that nature. But the fact remains is that if it wasn't for the competition game and the deep insecurity of these narcissists in our lives, there would be no offering up of the things that we created. And when we created those things for stability and created those environments and the support network in our lives and the people in our lives, we were only met with envy and jealousy by the narcissist, and they rolled their eyes and shook their head and said, why do you have all these friends and I don't? So it was always this undermining taking place, and this slander done to third parties about us, that we were just horrific and abusive and scary and damaging and mentally ill and couldn't control ourselves. And that is what they projected, and they set us up into abuse time and again, in a breakdown, in a collapse, in a painful environment, a painful relationship or situation, a crisis. And by doing that again and again, they were able to point the finger and, play the victim like a professional at that time, to get other people on board with the slander that they were saying about us. And this has gone on our whole lives, guys. We have experienced this, many of us, our whole entire lives. We did not know that family and friends and people close to us were in such competition with us and did not want to see us do well, and did not want to, see us do our best. They actually enjoyed and liked when we were down and hurting or addicted to things, or, in sleeping in a car, and they tried to make that happen See, it's one thing to wish pain on somebody that you don't like, right? But our narcissists and these gang stalkers, they take it a step farther and they act on those evil thoughts and they try to hurt and injure and destroy and isolate and alienate and harm and hurt and slander and smear us as real targeted individuals. And our voice never really gets heard because, they block us on these channels. It's hard to relate when, you're being tortured. You know what I mean? And we do our best. We try to do our best at explaining, what our experience has been. And paying that forward is key for all of us. We all need each other in this fight. And iron sharpens iron. You know what I mean? So it's like there are real targets out there that I talk to and that I, try, the hardest I can to work with in some fashion or another in order to, impart what God has given to me throughout the day and to pay that forward and to spread it so that it helps others. And, it's this isolation and this hijacking of our environment and the things in our environment and the relationships through abuse that has led to us being isolated for years and being held captive because each time we, exercise our willpower and get really busy and really active, well, the abusers are just parallel to that activity. And again, it's the dance that I always say, it's 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, merry-go-round dance of frustration onto explosiveness. That's what they're trying to produce by arranging the environment in an unnatural way, in a coordinated, organized way. That is what they do. And, people just don't want to admit that they're a part of something like this. It has nothing to do with, when you tell 20 out of 20 people and they just say, oh, I've never heard of that. I've never seen that. Like isn't that some conspiracy theory or something like that? That's usually, the response you get. Oh, you're one of those people that believes that, you're being followed around and targeted and stuff. And you know what I mean? So there's just a lot of negativity surrounding the whole topic and misdirection and just pure guilt by association type manipulation that they do with movements like the truther movement and all these different movements. They get infiltrated and then they become dragnets, and they become factories to radicalize citizens. Do you understand what I'm saying? They become these factories that start to radicalize the citizens because they want conflict. They want instability. That is a goal. Okay? And I've shown this from all angles, but that's what they want. They want destructiveness. They want breakdown. They want collapse. They want crisis management. And it's crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis. Do you guys honestly think that these crises that we've been going through for the last 20 years, one crisis after the next, before you even get done with the first crisis, the next one is on the way, and then the next one, and then the next one? Don't you understand warfare tactics and how it's to suffocate you, how it's to really bury you alive? Don't you realize that it becomes the excuse to have domination and total control systems that take away everything that makes us human? Do you understand that? That's all I'm trying to relay, is that many of us who have woken up and have been victims of this targeting, we didn't ask for this. You know what I mean? It's not like, we wanted to get on YouTube and start talking about it. You know what I mean? And we've been tortured many times before when we do talk about it. You know what I mean? So, and we just end up going through many different grievous things that no person deserves to go through. Even if somebody is guilty of something, there needs to be a right way, a process of dealing with that, rather than just using a hijacked mob of people and the victim's loved ones. You know what I mean? That's what they love to do. They love to take your support, take your loved ones who loved you prior to the gang stalking starting, and then they just they just love to injure you over and over, like hitting a bruise over and over with the people that you love the most, to grieve you, to break you, to make you give up, to cause you to give up your fight, your control, your fire inside. They want to put that fire out. They don't want you thinking on your own. They don't want you feeling on your own. That is being data mined, okay? And then that is being sold in your digital clone is, probably traded in some stock market or, in other ways. It's just like they have copied, our senses, our neurological brainwave signatures. They have copied our EEG. They have copied all the electrical signals of the body and the nervous system, okay? And that is what they have done. And there is a broadcast system that they use in order to do this, body snatcher, like heterodyning body snatcher, where they are able to sync up everyone around the target and sync them up together with the target in a technological way and in a spiritual way. And you will notice, if you're a real targeted individual, one day it's like the light switch, and then everything will break down on you, and you will catch people damaging your vehicle, damaging your tires, putting nails in the tire, putting notes on the car. You will notice people getting in your car with the doors being locked and leaving notes on the seat. You will notice, just all these different things that start to surface, where people are coming and going at the same time as you, and they're all wearing red everywhere you go, red cars, white cars, that's the only cars you see surrounding you, especially in parking lots, hitting you, bumping into you, breaking your glass, keying your car, throwing food at your car, surrounding you in parking lots and not getting out of the car and sitting there with you the whole time. And if you don't get out of the car, they won't get out of the car. And when you leave, they leave. You know what I mean? So, it's hardly paranoia. These patterns of abuse and control and evil. And I just wanted to say, I love you guys. And I just wanted to come on here and just, kind of rant for a minute and just talk about some of these things that I was just thinking about today. I'm going to keep coming at you with some, documentation, some abuse that's been personally done to me again and again and again. I'll keep coming with those commentary videos about, the color sensitizing and the coming and going with you and the tactics that are plausible deniability laced, and the moral high ground that these abusers take as they slander you and they assume and take the moral high ground, owies, and position themselves in a very manipulative way to gain the moral high ground prior to doing their abuse. And then when they finally do the abuse and you react, they've got it all set up to produce further abuse to you and to allow them to get their hooks in you deeper with those bad reactions and bring more trouble on you. That is the goal. And they will not stop for anything. And if you go to the police, if you go to anybody else and try to say, hey, this is happening, there's stalking laws on the books in most states, there's, harassment laws on the books in each state, and all they will do is turn around and accuse you of the very complaint that you try to make, and then try to bring that to pass and attach that to you. That's what they will do, most likely, unless you have friends that are family friends or somebody that has been in your family for a long time that was ex-military or in the police force. You know what I mean? This is not singling anybody out. This is a system where they use a broadcast system and use signals to the brain and the body of the target and the perps. And we are just saying that the perps are the ones who willingly submit to this kind of control. They're promised godhood. They're promised, perks, and they're promised all these things that EMF can produce, like the voice to skull, and it can be used in a beneficial way. But that's not the way they're using it with us. and they are always trying to evoke a bad reaction and put us on the edge of crisis after crisis. Why do they do that? Well, because it ties up your time, energy, and money, and you're always having to look at that crisis and try to manage that so you could never get back to yourself. You see what I'm saying? That's literally why they do it. It's to dislodge you from you and your own thinking, your own life, your own choices, your own person. That is what it is designed to do. The trauma, the abuse, is to dislocate you from yourself. And that is what they want. And that is why they do escalate the abuse. And even when we show them doing the abuse, they still just do it. It doesn't matter to them. There is nothing that is going to stop these people but God himself. And that's why I pray. That's why I pray, because, many of us go through where family and friends have left us, betrayed us, lied about us, slandered us, tried to get a breakdown in our lives again and again and again, working with and partnering with enemies and people that were very bad to try to further our affliction, to try to bring us deeper. It's like they were there to kick us when we were down, and they helped to get us down. And then when they were confident enough that we couldn't do anything about it, that's when they started to grandstand over us. You see what I'm saying? And brag and boast and mock and gaslight and try to get that response from us of anger and frustration. But these types feed only on pain. And literally, there's nobody home. That's what I'm trying to say. For the people that perp and do this and go along with this and take pleasure and enjoyment and rejoice at hurting others and, will do anything for position, power, control, and prestige. Like literally will do anything for that and will pay any price, any cost and sacrifice, whatever it takes. These perps, don't care about humanity. They don't care about eternity, and they're doing everything to try to have their best life now and have been promised different things, you know what I mean? But it's really the short end of the stick when you think about it. And many people are just very ignorant and don't realize, what they're even participating in. And that's why I'm here to basically, wake you up and help you to realize that, you reap what you sow. The measure that you use, it'll be measured back to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, men will repay it into your lap. And that is what I believe, that this universe works that way. And when you're wronging other people and destroying other people's lives, and you're trying to hide the abuse, and, it's this collapse and control, passive aggressive game and dance of, eliminating resources and connections and the support that a person can even show themselves. You know what I mean? It's like each move you make is opposed and met with an interruption that brings a redirection of what you're trying to do. That is the constant battle that we're in, that even when we do good things and those things are beneficial and healthy to us, it's like, the war is being brought to you at your local gym. If you go to the local gym, is what I'm trying to say. The war is being brought to you when you walk from your place to your car. The war is being brought to you when you go into a store. The war is being brought to you when you try to have friends, when you try to have a family, when you try to get married, when you try to do all these things, and you just want to be, able to live a normal, human existence. That will not be allowed. You will be opposed. You will be met with hostility for daring to think that you could be autonomous and independent. They want us to submit and join the mob. That is what the goal is, basically, is to get you to submit and be like, you guys are right. I should have just gone along with you guys. You know what I mean? And they are vile creatures. They have no conscience. And I still do. I can't help that. You know what I mean? I have a conscience. I can't go to sleep at night if, I'm deliberately, doing things that are injurious to others, like, and I don't like ever let it stand in my life too long at all. If there is any issue, I face it and deal with it, and, become empowered by the responsibility and the ownership. And, without an identity, you can't be responsible for anything. And that's what I'm trying to say, is that the measure that they're not responsible shows that there's nobody home, because that person would be accountable and responsible for the things that they've been doing to us. You know what I mean? And they would feel bad and guilty and want to do something to correct it, because it's 25 years of damage and robbery and taking away opportunities, taking away, relationships, taking away, career paths, taking away. And they did that too by keeping us in the fight, being preoccupied with surviving them. That is what I'm trying to say, is that all our resources and time and energy have been just to survive what they're doing to us. And that is what many of you out there are experiencing when you are forced by the circumstances to have to take your car and go sit and park in a parking lot all day, because you have been dislodged from every area of your life, and not intentionally by you. It's just that is the result of their slander and abuse and lies and insistence, and to dislodge you. And so that then when you're homeless, they can say, see, he's mentally ill, he can't take care of himself. And that is the nature of this, and why they get you homeless is because they're trying to, really finish you off. That's what they're trying to do. And it just becomes the evidence. They don't want to talk about what they did to make you homeless, what they did calling your property manager, what they did, calling the police department in your local community to insist that you're a threat and dangerous. Like what they did to call the HOA board, what they did to, involve themselves in these manipulative, deceitful, and concerned ways in order to bring about the results of destruction and pain and harm and loss and misery for no cause, for no reason other than envy, jealousy, immaturity, infantile thinking, black and white thinking, grandiose thinking, greater than, less than, I win, you lose, I'm superior to you. Don't you see how great I am? Look at how great I am. Oh, you're not acknowledging how great I am? Oh, okay, well then the destruction, And then they hide the abuse and destroy everything, whether it's resources, it doesn't matter what it is. They hide the abuse and will break everything and destroy everything and say you did it to third parties. That is what they do. And then they run with it. And they slander you and tell everyone, look at what he's done in his anger. Didn't you see how angry he was? And of course, they never want to acknowledge the setup and the invitation into a circumstance, really, that we found out that the narcissist psychopath has prearranged, because the pattern is there to always get a bad reaction. And that is what they push for. And that is the only thing they push for. So your peace, your rest, your harmony, your alignment, all those things are impossible to do when the narcissist is, and the psychopath is, competing over your identity, and they want your identity for their own. You see what I'm saying? So it's just, you're just another commodity, another item or appliance that they get tickled by and think, oh, I want his words. I want his thought patterns. I want his way of looking at life. I want his social life. I want to be him. And this is what has been available, is what I'm saying, and probably sold on the market through EMF, electromagnetic, waves, and the copying and creating of digital clones in this sense, in an EMF sense, where those digital clones and brainwave patterns can be broadcast directly to the brain and to the nervous system of whoever is the highest bidder, I guess. If you want to be somebody for the day, you get to have their senses, you get to have their thinking patterns, you get to have their feelings, their physical senses and sensations, and you can actually share in and hive mind, just hive mind it up to the person that you envy so much and that person that you want to be so bad. And this is where the feeding frenzy begins. They just will get synced up to the target and then just start feeding and feeding and feeding and always offering, you deceitful environments that are always shifting and changing and collapsing and breaking, and they can't ever extend themselves enough to, create that stability that is needed, because they don't want to admit that they've been the ones destroying everything and breaking everything and harming everything. And all because their ego couldn't allow them to be seen for who they really are. And, we spent our time walking with God, exposing the darkness, not deliberately, but just that was the result of our presence. And that presence is God himself. And you can see the layers and you can see underneath what is buried. You know what I mean? And that begins to surface with the fire and with the heat of the Holy Spirit, I believe. And, the hidden demons in these people, and especially our family members, these generational demons that wanted to dominate and control and ruin us. Well, like I said, there's nobody home and our family members to even resist, to even make a stand and create that division between soul and spirit, or that which is of God, that which is of the goodness versus that which isn't in you. You know what I mean? And they don't know their right hand from their left hand, even though they profess themselves to be wise. They are fools. That's basically the bottom line. And they rejoice when they can see and create calamity in your life and damage in your life. They rejoice and they love it and they feed off of that pain. And this is the type that we're dealing with. They have no remorse. They have no mercy. They have no empathy. They have no concern. They will fake concern in order to get the control in your life. They will fake like they care about you and invite you in only to collapse that tool that they use to invite you in, because they know you're needy, because they've created the abuse in every area of your life. And you are over there in left field, trying to put out the flames that have been started. You're over there in left field trying to take your time, energy, and money and fix the damage done to your car and fix the damage done to your place of living and fix the damage done to your job. And you go from one thing to the next as the narcissist just blames you that you're the cause of the abuse that they're hiding. And it is a disgusting game. And I know in my life that the truth will eventually prevail. And I trust that the truth will prevail in your lives. And I am just here to relay to you guys the nature of the things that I see. And it's just like, so bad when we live in a society that is, completely castrated and ignorance is bliss. Nobody wants to think for themselves. But, the problem with that is that when you give up your right to think and you trust the so-called experts to make all that decision making for you without even looking into anything to see if what's being said is even true or accurate or real, and you just trust the so-called experts because that's what they are, they're the experts. But it doesn't account for the corruption and the influence of power structures and how that happens and how money flows and how money talks, and this whole thing is an industry and a business. The internet of bodies, the internet of behaviors, and the internet of things is, a long time ago, basically. Now they've got the internet of bodies. Go figure, so it's much deeper than just syncing up devices to a network. They are syncing up bodies and brains and nervous systems to a network, and then people have access to that network. And meaning they have access to you as a node in that system of a bi-directional stream of energy going back and forth here, okay? And it is bi-directional, meaning that signals are coming from your brain and your nervous system, and they are being captured and then there is a synthetic broadcast of signals and EMF, very low frequency waves that are being broadcast over whole cities, okay? Over whole cities. And they have demonstrated to me in my life how everybody is completely hijacked, and most people have no clue that they're even being hijacked and being used as basically a weapon against their loved ones. You know what I mean? The slander, the lies, the smear campaigns, the manipulation, the destructiveness, the anger, the hostility, the impatience. This is the way our enemies are with us. Always looking for a way to take us up, then take us down, then take us up, then take us down. And that is what they do. And they will take all your resources around you and then begin to start, pushing on the vulnerabilities. And when they do that, they're trying to get a breakdown. And then once they do affect you this way and get a breakdown, it starts to snowball with layers of broken because they're in every area pushing on those vulnerabilities. And then it's this overwhelmed feeling that all at once, everything is breaking down at the same time, whether it's a job or a relationship or your car, or it doesn't matter what it is. There is this multi-layered attack going on for real targeted individuals in America, in the United States, and it is organized, it is coordinated, and it is at play every day, whether you're a soccer mom and you think this doesn't apply to you, or whether you're like me, you know what I mean? It doesn't really matter if you're a Christian. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter what you are, or, what your flavor is, so to speak. The bottom line is that this is a system in place that does not care about, anything else but this selective enforcement and targeting and neutralizing you as an autonomous individual and person. And it has nothing to do with a lot of the propaganda that they push to get us all divided and fighting and arguing over false choices that they give. Okay? It goes way deeper than that. We need to see that and recognize that we as a people have been in this warfare, and it has been electromagnetic warfare. It has been military grade, military style tactics of radicalization, and where tactics are used to deliberately radicalize the population and to deliberately get conflict going. And that is what we've seen. That is what the gang stalking is about, partially, I believe, is this fever that's in the background. As everybody's lives start to break down more, they radicalize society this way. And it's very controlled. And I believe that a lot of the tactics being used, the military is totally involved in. You know what I mean? Because it's just that they are the buyers of the technology, and, they have the money and the interest in, quote unquote, keeping things safe. But when you go to examine anything, they just declare national security, and you can't look into anything. So you don't even know what they're doing. And they keep it all a matter of national security. So they can just selectively label you. And what they've done to many of us is just label us. And they try to piggyback off of what's believable, or try to create scenarios in your life to piggyback off of it and get the snowball effect rolling to make the slander believable and to continue to abuse. They're always working to try to continue to keep the abuse going. That's what they're always trying to do. And they don't want you to be able to breathe. That is the level of the pressure I'm talking about. They don't want you to be able to swallow your spit. Okay, that is the level of persecution that I'm talking about here. It is like a beehive that has been kicked, and that the queen has decided to send out the signal to all the other drone workers that there is a threat and it's you, and they are all coordinated and organized, flying at you, trying to sting you. That is what this hive-minded army of civilians in regular clothes that get hijacked, get controlled, get taken over, and like robots are used as a weapon against targeted individuals, against people that have been marginalized and labeled and profiled, and with no evidence or proof, they just try to manufacture the proof, they just try to make it up, and then they try to get you to step into the environment that they've created to produce an outcome that they want. And this is all they do. You don't get to live your own life and be an individual because you have to spend all your time just trying to survive their constant injections of where they're injecting themselves in your affairs all the time. And there's nothing we can do but just, deal with it point by point and deal with it according to God and prayer. And part of me getting on here is just to break down and to talk about some of these experiences, just to help others. But I wanted you guys to know I love you. It's criminal, it's evil, it's corrupt, it's rotten. It has changed all of life because social life is no longer the same, and we can't relate to who we want to. And if we start doing that, we are quickly put back in our place, right? In that electronic prison camp and cage that they've built, so that we are always isolated, and even the people that have loved us have forgotten about us and don't even remember who we are, and then start acting against us and being used by this abusive system. And do they question? No, they just go along with it and create so much damage that it's like, I just know that God is watching. Like, that's all I know. Really, like he sees everything that's going on, and touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. I know people quote that, but the reality is, I've seen God step in many times. Many times. He might allow things to go on for a while, but it's literally only to rebuke and correct and put these people in their place. Because no rationality, we can't reason with them. We can't get through to them. There's no breaking through to to their brains. They are completely hijacked. There is nobody home. And you ever notice when you're talking to somebody and they just drift off all the time and, oh, what? And their eyes are all glassy and they just drift off. And next thing you know, you're like, these people are like, what did you just say? I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. I'm like, hey, this is really important. And then, the daydreaming starts. It's always this constant snubbing, this constant, discarding and devaluation is what I'm trying to talk about here, that these narcissist scumbag manipulators and haters of all human life do. And they are trying to create havoc, drag you and me under that mess, say we did it to feel better about themselves, and then hold us under that mess. And let that mess chew us up like a meat grinder. That is what they try to do. We didn't create the mess. We didn't cause the mess. We didn't do anything. We were living our lives, and next thing you know, we're losing our place. We're losing cars. We're losing jobs. We're losing relationships. We go to our family and friends, and they just don't understand and can't comprehend. Always misdirecting us to, some false solution because they don't want to hear what the problem is. And the reason they don't want to hear it is because they're involved in it. It goes way deeper and it's way darker than you can even imagine. That's what I'm trying to say, is we have to get our heads around the fact that people, that even your own mother or someone that close to you can do this to you and can disassociate and be hijacked and controlled by the devil himself. And the directed speech will start through your loved ones. And you'll just be like, and they do it in a mocking way, in a way that lets you know, we know, and we're doing this to you because we want to let you know. Like that's what the directed speech is all about. The constant gaslighting, the constant feeling of powerlessness, that you are never private, that nothing you do is ever private, that every thought you have is recorded and it is going to be broadcast back to you. So that's this mirroring, and there's a lot of science and technology involved in that hive-minded syncing. But I'm not a professional or an expert in that, but I do bring light to it and point people to it. So I just want to say, guys, I love you. Thanks for watching, and it was good having this chat. Peace out.